Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Abhina Pongasari. I am the chair of the Labour Women's Network. I just wanted to welcome you to our first virtual event. And I know that you guys have probably missed seeing LW1 during lockdown, so we thought we had to organise a session especially for you. This session is for young women in the labour and trade union movements. We've got a fantastic panel lined up. But before I begin by introducing the panel, I thought I'd quickly just tell you a bit about the Labour Women's Network, just in case you didn't know about it. So the Labour Women's Network was set up 32 years ago, and the aims of it is to train loads of women for public office and also secure equality in the Labour Party. And we aim to fight sexism and discrimination and campaign for lots of changes within Labour Party policy, practice and culture. For those of you that have not heard us say this tagline, we believe in sisterhood, no matter your shade of red, and we aim to bring diverse Labour women together to make our voice heard. Now, I know this sounds cheesy, but this is really what we stand for. I thought I'd also point out to the fact that, you know, one of the things that we're particularly proud of is the fact that we have successfully contributed to a call for all women shortlists, and that has taken us from 21 women Labour MPs in 1987 to we're now at 51%, and I'm one of the 51% intake, and so is Nadia. But I just also wanted to say that this is a safe space. We are going to be filming this event. So for those of you that don't want to be seen, just please switch off your camera. We're most likely to be post a video on our social media networks, so watch out for that. And also just make sure that, you know, just be mindful of the language you use towards one another when asking questions. So before I introduce the panel, I thought I'd quickly just explain about myself. I am the chair of the Labour Women's Network. I'm also one of the new intakes of MPs, as I've mentioned, and I'm also in a PPS to Annalise Dodds. On the panel today, we have Angela Rayner, who is, she's waving to us. She is the deputy leader of the Labour Party, which I'm really proud of. And she has also been on the Labour Women's Network's training programme. Next on the panel, if you can just quickly give a wave, is Nadia Whitmore, MP. Where are you? Oh yeah, you're there. Nadia is currently baby of the house. I wouldn't say she's as young as she was a few weeks ago. She's now 24. And she is the youngest MP in the House, and she's currently PPS to Labour Shadow Health Secretary John Ashworth. And she's been giving me lots of advice on how to deal with health, particularly through my role as an MP. And she's currently the graduate of the Labour Women's Network training programme as well. Next, we've also got Kate Dearden, who is the Head of Research and Campaigns for Community Trade Union. She's also the member of the Labour Women's Management Committee as well. Give a wave, Kate. And then finally, we've got Amelia Rose Teague, who is the who did the first cohort of the Joe Cox Women in Leadership programme, which was it's run by the Labour Women's Network. She's worked for Yvette Cooper for the last 3 years as her senior parliamentary assistant, and she is now moving to work for the Labour Party in to do the briefing and work in the briefing team. And she's also on the Labour Women's Management Committee team as well. I'm going to now open it up to panellists. They will each have 3 minutes to introduce themselves and discuss their experiences within the Labour Party. And it'd be good to talk about how, as young women, they've been able to shape and make changes within the Labour Party. And then after that, I'm going to open it up to the audience, all of you guys, to ask questions. So think carefully about what questions you would like to ask. So over to you, Angie.
There we go. I'm unmuted. You can hear me. Only in the Labour Women's Network would you get muted and unmuted. No, I'm only joking. Absolutely brilliant to be here and to be on this call with so many of our sisters. And Labour Women's Network is really important, and having a women's network is incredibly important, and I couldn't do it justice in 3 minutes, but when you hear from all the amazing women and you see the people that we're up against now, you'll see why it's so important. And you know, me becoming deputy leader of the Labour Party is something I never expected to do, and kind of still feel a little bit like it's a bit scary. And some of the stuff around how I got here, me and Becky, it was well known that me and Rebecca Long Bailey I wasn't going to stand against my sister, who quite frankly both me and her rock and are amazing, and often we find that they want us women to compete with each other, whereas I won't compete with my fellow women. I think we're all absolutely amazing and we can enhance each other rather than compete with each other, and that's what Labour Women's Network taught me. It's about knowing your place, and your place is somewhere really high and where you want it to be. So instead of like pushing you down, it's about how we can enhance and support each other, but in a realistic way as well, because, you know, what I don't want to do on this call is make people think it's all roses and wonderful. It really isn't. It can be really nasty and horrible. And what Labour Women's Network did for me was support me, but also realistically give me an outlook on what I was prepared for. Because I think in politics it can be really horrible at times, and what the network did for me was give me a place where I felt like I could be myself and enhance who I am. So it didn't try and make me fit a box. And a lot of the time in politics, they try and put you in a box, like you're that box or you're this type. And actually what you are is an amazing person in your own right, with broad principles around why you joined the Labour movement, obviously, but actually that your voice is deserved and should be heard. And that's what I want to do and encourage people today. And this is why I'm on this call is I think Labour Women's Network is incredibly important. If you're not already a member, you need to join and be a member, but also about how we can create that women's network and support each other. And we try and do it a bit broader than that. We do it with journalists, we do it with other people in the field, and just to try and amplify each other and support each other. Because I think that's so important, because women do get a difficult ride. Me and Diane Abbott were one of the top 5 that were abused during the general election. I still get it to this day, and Diane gets even more. She gets like 50% of all the abuse of women. So I think women of colour in particular get it tremendously bad. And that's why I think it's so important that we support each other and help each other. And I'm here tonight to support you and help you and reaffirm my commitment to making sure that we support a network for women that brings women forward and enhances your voice and not tell you what your voice should be. Abena, someone's muted you. I don't know how that happened.
Hi, someone doesn't want me to talk. Thank you so much, Angie, for that. That was really good, particularly the tips that you've done. I'm now going to introduce Nadia Wickham, and I'm really sorry, Nadia, I got your name wrong the first time when I know you really well, so please forgive me if you can. So over to you, Nadia.
That's absolutely fine, don't worry. It's been a long week and it's only Monday, so can everyone hear me okay? I've got these new AirPods because apparently you're not really an MP until you get a pair of these, and I still can't use them properly. It's a real honour to be here with all of you, and particularly Abena and Angie, who I'm so proud is the deputy leader of our party. And Abena, it's great having you in Parliament, and to see people. I can see Kat from Nottingham. I can saw someone else. I knew Jackie from Labour Women's Network. So it's great to see you as well. So a little bit about my experience in Parliament and in the Labour movement. So I've been involved in the Labour movement since I was 16. My local area was absolutely ravaged by austerity, and it was the bedroom tax that made me want to join the fight back. Like Angela, before I was an MP, I was a care worker, and I think it was that experience of being in a feminized workforce that is low paid, hyper exploited, has very poor terms and conditions, and that being so linked to it being majority women and also disproportionately Black and Asian women and migrant women further politicise me. Some of the things that I've noticed since coming to this place, I mean, I know that Angie and Abena will agree, it's a real culture shock when you first get here. Of course, it's amazing that over half of the Parliamentary Labour Party is now women, and that's something to celebrate. But I think as well, we need to move on from that and on to implementing some long-lasting changes that actually change the structure of the party and change the structure of Parliament, because when you're here, it's just so obvious that this place wasn't built for people like us, whether it's being shouted down by male Tory MPs and the way that they target particularly young women, and particularly outspoken women, the social media abuse. You know, I've had quite a few comments over the summer about gaining weight and things that aren't important and don't affect my ability to represent my constituents. I think it would be great to get out of this conversation something that we can do together moving forward as a group of women in politics, maybe working with the unions, working with care and retail sectors, and women who have been really badly impacted by COVID and are going to be set to be even more impacted as the economic fallout really takes hold. But yeah, I'm really happy to answer any questions you have and to do what I can to amplify your voice, and hopefully lots of you will be joining us here one day.
And thank you for that, Nadia. That was really inspiring about your experience getting into politics. I'm now going to ask Kate to also speak as well.
Thanks, Abner, and thanks so much everyone for taking your time this evening to join us. It's great to see so many of you here and so many young women too. You know, it's brilliant to be at an event where there's so many young women wanting to be involved and engaged with the labour movement as well as the trade union movement. And a rarity, unfortunately, which is why this conversation is so important and why it's so great to see you. So I'll give you a bit of background to my involvement in the trade union movement in particular and touch on that, and be happy to take sort of any further questions in the Q&A. So I've worked for my trade union community, trade union, for 3 years now, and as Abner mentioned in the introduction, I'm also on Labour Women's Network Management Committee, and I've been on that committee for 2 years too. My experience, so I've been involved in and sort of understood the trade union movement before the Labour movement through my family. So it was, you know, my dad that was a Unite rep in his print works, and I remember, you know, sitting in on his meetings, my colouring books. You know, my granddad was a union rep, so I kind of understood the trade union movement before I did understand the Labour movement in itself. And I've always approached my politics and my involvement in Labour through that lens, and, you know, of course through a feminist one too. But I never actually thought that I'd work for a trade union. I never thought that, you know, I'd become a senior figure in my own trade union. And, you know, it might have probably because sometimes they might have sounded like me, but it definitely didn't look like me. They definitely didn't speak to me. And all of that is why I'm really passionate about more women getting involved in our movement and in the labour movement too. You know, we all know that since trade unions were formed, we've made workplaces greener, smarter, better, and more prosperous places to work for workers and for women all across the country. But there are still so many challenges that we face, especially for women, you know, from equal pay, the menopause at work, to sexual harassment, which unfortunately has been exposed across our own trade union movement recently. That makes me angry, it makes me sad. It's really difficult to process and take on those certain occurrences within the movement that we now have to face up to and tackle. But those challenges aren't going to go away overnight. So I think, you know, as well as educating colleagues across the movement on these challenges, on these issues, we need leaders in the trade union movement making them a priority and actually leading the fights of the present and the future. You know, when I turn up to meetings sometimes with other political officers from different trade unions or policy briefings, I'm sometimes the only woman in the room, or if I'm lucky, there might be one or two other women, and that's a problem. Of course, we have brilliant trade union general secretaries, including my boss and leaders presently, but unfortunately they are too male, they're too stale, they're too pale. And for us and for trade unions to stay relevant, for us to stay powerful, and for workers to look at us and actually think, yes, you represent me, you understand me, you look like me, I want to be part of you, and I want you to help me. We need to sound like those workers and look like them too. And you know, all my experience in the movement has taught me that so far. So it'd be great to hear your experiences, you know, if you're involved in a trade union, if there's certain barriers that put you off joining a trade union or got you more involved, and to hear about your experiences too. But I'd firstly leave you with asking you for two things. To one, get involved in your trade union or look to see if you have a union that might be recognised in your workplace and contact them about getting involved to find out how they might be able to help you. Or look at the Trade Union Congress's website for the different trade unions across all the industries in the UK. And secondly, you know, if you're not already a member, to join LWN so that you have the tools you need to become the next leader in the trade union movement, or support another sister through our fundraising efforts and through our brilliant training programmes to become the next leaders in the movement too. You know, I've met so many amazing young women and women in Labour and the trade union movement and through Labour Women's Network, and that powerful sisterhood, you know, I think if anybody is going to tackle the challenges facing the trade union movement, it will be us to secure more progress for working women. So I'd really encourage you to please get involved, and it'd be great to hear your experiences and your thoughts too. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. That's really good. Particularly, you've given some really good tips in how to join a union and getting involved, which I think is really important because it is very male dominated. Finally, I'm now going to open to our last panelist, which is Amelia. So over to you, Amelia.
Hi, my name's Amelia, and I sit on the LWN's management committee and have done since September last year, since conference. I'm currently a senior parliamentary assistant to Yvette Cooper, and I'm moving on in a few weeks to work in the briefing team at the Labour Party, which I'm really excited for. I think we really wanted to host this event to make sure that young women are involved in the LWN and know that it is for you. I first became involved in the LWN through the first cohort of the Jo Cox Women in Leadership scheme, which was absolutely amazing. And if anybody is thinking of applying for the scheme, please do, or please feel free to contact me on Twitter for any tips or anything, because it really did change my life, not just in terms of the things that I learned, it was also learning about the amazing network that was right there in front of me in touching distance that I managed to, you know, connect to. And it was, I think when I was on the scheme as well, it was a time when it was quite tough being a Labour member sometimes. Sometimes you'd go to your CLP and you wouldn't really want to, or the atmosphere wouldn't be great. You know, we've all had meetings where it's not felt that nice. So having the LWN there and that amazing collective of women there, as we call it in our first cohort, is a posse in our pocket that is just always there for you. You know, it's really amazing to have that. I got involved in politics at not a young age. I think I started thinking about politics probably in my teenage years. I grew up in Barnsley, which is, and in a deprived ward in Barnsley as well. There wasn't much social mobility. There was probably a handful of us that went to university. You know, it was few and far in between. And I remember the first time I really thought about politics and realised it affected me was I went into my headmaster's office for something. I don't think I was in trouble. I might have been, but I went into my headmaster's office, and in there was all these boxes of shoes. And I went, oh my gosh, is this all lost property in here? And the headmaster was like, oh no, well, actually, we're reprimanding the kids for not having the right footwear, for not having black leather shoes. But actually, when we probed it, we realised the families couldn't afford shoes. So my headmaster had gone out and bought up a Windsor's World of shoes that had gone bust, so that he could hand out black shoes to the children. And I think the reason I then ended up going into politics. So, you know, that definitely lodged in my brain and flipped a switch. But I think as young women Labour activists, our experiences are so important because we have just watched such a rapid acceleration of poverty and child poverty in this country. We have watched as just, you know, food banks have exploded, and you have teachers doing kids washing because they can't afford electricity. And that's where I think that our experiences are really, really important in the Labour movement, and we all deserve to have a voice in that. My one tip for the young women on here would be to get involved in the LWN. And there's so many different ways you can get involved. You can get involved by coming to our events that you have tonight. You can get involved by campaigning with us, campaigning for baby leave if your council doesn't have a proper baby leave policy, and even down to the littler things. If you see a manel on Twitter, an all-male panel, tweet us and we will call them out because it's one of our favourite things to do. So there are so many ways to get involved, and my one piece of advice would be please join the LWN if you're not already a member, and do get involved.
Thanks, Amelia, for your tips and insight into your experience as well, particularly your journey into politics. I'm now going to say, I want to say thank you to all the panel speakers for their contributions. I'm now going to open it up to everybody that's at this event. I just want to remind people that this is a safe space, and also just to be kind of respectful to each other, and I know that you will. And also just to remind you that the purpose of this event is to talk about young women in the Labour Party in terms of how you can get active in the trade unions and also get involved in the Labour Party. So if we keep to that specific kind of focus, then that will be really good for everybody, so we can all get something out of it. So I think I saw, is it Bhavendra put her hand up? Yep. No? Did anyone put their hand up in terms of speaking? Okay, yeah. And so I'm going to pick two people to speak that I see right now. If anyone else has any questions that they would like to ask, if you can just put it in the chat box as well, so it's easier for me to kind of pick. So if you just put your name and your question. So I'm going to go to Ellie Anderson first, and then Bella Ford. If you can just keep your question or your recommendation, and if you've got any tips, just really short, that'll be really quick. Good, thank you. Elliot Anderson? Oh yes, someone has to unmute you, sorry. If someone can unmute.
Hi, thank you so much. It's so brilliant to hear such empowering women speak. So it's quite a broad question, but I'm currently running for Young Labour Chair, and I'm running against two fantastic women. It's three candidates, all women. It's just fantastic. And I was just wondering if you had any advice to me as a candidate as to how to uphold the other candidates and how to uphold each other against obviously the abuse, especially the sexist abuse that I can imagine we're all getting in the race. Thank you.
Very good question. I'm going to go to Bella Ford, and then I'm going to go to the panel. Bella?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for picking me. Being a woman is so important to my kind of being a Labour member. I was really inspired to want to work in politics by Rosie Duffield winning in this sort of sea of masculine blue politics. It was, yeah, she's my MP. And I really want to work for a female MP. I want to do sort of what you do, Amelia. I want to be a sort of assistant or something. But I've just graduated, and the only job experience I have is really working in pubs or on a farm. I was wondering if you had any suggestions of things that would make my CV sort of stand out, any experience I could get. That would be amazing. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's good. So I'm going to open it up to the questions. I'm going to open up to the panel. So I'm just going to recap them really quickly. So Ellie Anderson is running for Young Labour Chair. Just want to say we're non-factional, so we can't really endorse you, but good luck to you. Good luck. I think your question is a really good question about upholding other candidates. There's nothing worse than having a toxic campaign. I think Angela would be able to give a good example of that, having run for deputy leader, plus the other panel as well. And Bella Ford, who's just graduated, tips for getting into politics. I know how difficult it can be getting a job in Parliament, having gone through that myself. So I'm going to start with Angela, then go to Nadia, and then go to Kate, then Amelia. That's okay? So if someone can unmute Angela.
Hi.
Hi.
You can hear me, yeah?
Yeah.
So there's two things that I just give you an example of, okay, Ellie, and this is to all of us as well. You see Fab Labour Women there, it says, on my WhatsApp. Now that WhatsApp was the one that we created for all the women that went for deputy and for leader. All of us were on that WhatsApp, and we gave inspirational quotes every day to each other. So even though we're all standing against each other, all of us, all the women, put ourselves in a little WhatsApp group and gave ourselves inspirational chats every single day. Wasn't campaigning or sniping at each other, just like, you know, women doing good and all that, because there's so much hate. So we amplified each other and looked after each other, even though we were opponents. So that's my advice, is to just try and be the example. And I often say that to women, because at times people feel like they have to compete. If it's a very masculine environment or a very bitter or toxic culture, people feel like they have to be accepted to be part of it, to join it. Don't do that. Rise above it. And when women do that and when we amplify each other, it's even better. And the other example I want to give you is on my wall here. See it here. This was sent me, and it's off a lovely person. And on the back it says, "Never forget how amazing you are and how you inspire people." I don't know this person. They just send them me through the post and tell me how amazing I am. So either get that, or if you know someone who's amazing, send them a postcard or a text and tell them how amazing they are as another woman, and encourage them on. Even because, like, I got that when I was having a really bad day, and it's a consultant neurologist. I've never met her before. She wrote to me to tell me what an inspiration I was to carry on doing what I'm doing. So they're my two top tips. And in terms of how do your CV stand out, I mean, if you've worked in a public house and things like that, then you've got people skills, and just showing you care about people and are able to work alongside that, and you've got some get up and go and some va-va-vum, I think will make you stand out. Just make your CV ooze your personality and the sort of person you are, and then you'll find the right person for you as well. Because working for an MP, I think, is quite a personal thing. So you don't want to be working for someone who you don't gel with either. So I just ooze your personality on your CV, and then if it links with that MP, then they'll see it and they'll snatch you up.
I think that's great advice, Angela. I'd say I think internal elections can be really nasty, and we've seen the horrific bullying of young Labour members during these elections. And the first thing I'd say is that we need a proper complaints process, as well as some serious work to change the culture of the party, because that can't be allowed to happen to any members or any person, but particularly not young Labour members. I'd say one important thing to do is to call out abuse of other candidates, and to be very clear with your campaigns team that, I mean, I'm sure nobody on your campaigns team would abuse other candidates, but be very clear that you don't stand for that, and that this is going to be a comradely election. On work experience, I think this is actually a really good question, because yes, we've got a 50-50, well, more than 50% of Labour MPs are women, and that's fantastic. But we've also, I think there are lots of structural problems, like, for example, that a lot of political advisors are men, even political advisors to women MPs, that lots of senior party officials are men, that lots of the suppose the behind the scenes gatekeepers tend to be men as well. So I think this is something that the Labour Party needs to work on. I think that we should be actively, and part of the reason why this is difficult is that MPs are employers, so we can kind of do what we want, but I don't think that should be the case. I think that there should be an obligation to interview women, to interview people from minority ethnic backgrounds, to interview disabled people, etc. One of the things that I always do when I advertise for a job is I make sure that I interview people who don't have traditional political experience, as well as those who do. I try and do it about half and half, because otherwise I could be missing out on some really amazing people just because they haven't worked in another MP's office or haven't worked for a union before, or, you know, whatever it is. You've got lots of skills from working in a pub, from working on a farm. I mean, if that was a prerequisite to entering politics, then I wouldn't be here either. So good luck in your application, and I hope that you're successful.
Thanks, and I'll just quickly touch on those two questions because I think Angela and Nadia have answered them brilliantly, and I'm sure Amelia will give you great tips as well. But just to say to Ellie, I've run for some elections before, especially in Young Labour, and they were really draining, unfortunately, and they did come with a lot of sort of negative comments and negative feedback on social media, and it sort of put me off tweeting for about a year after that election. And it's such a shame that had to happen, and I wouldn't want it to happen to any other young woman that's going into politics, especially in Young Labour. It's your first interactions for a lot of people with the Labour Party and with politics, and it should be a really positive and welcoming place. And I think in addition to what Angela and Nadia have said, I think it's the donut method or something like that, surrounding yourself by a group of sisters, a group of women who you can trust, who you can offload to, who can support you on social media when you are getting those negative comments, and drown out the trolls and drown out the nasty comments, and that are just so unnecessary and not needed. But also, I always checked in with my non-political friends, with my family, and that was such a refreshing source of support, and sort of grounded you a bit more in terms of reality, and sort of made you see what was important, what comments do matter, and so you don't let any of those comments define you, define your election, and define who you are. So a combination of all those, I think, hopefully can help some way, and good luck in the election too. On the job applications, I've never worked for an MP, so I can't give you the best tips, Bella. But if you are a union, they do offer sort of CV and cover letter courses, and can help check over it and guide you through. So if you are in a union, have a look at their learning courses and stuff. And if not, I'm happy to speak to you afterwards about the different courses available to you, if that's any help.
Oh, I didn't realise I was off mute, sorry. I was just really enjoying this panel tips. I think the tips given so far are really, really helpful, and I wish when I was going into politics that there was this kind of panel discussion for me, because I really had no clue when I was going into politics. I've seen that quite a few people have put in the box to ask some questions, so I'm going to open it up to them. So Kathleen Clark, if you go first, and then Rosa Bolger, and then Adelina.
Abena, can I just come in with some tips for Bella?
Of course, yeah. I didn't see Bella's one.
Oh,
sorry, did I miss you out?
Yes, all right.
I'm so sorry.
So Bella, my honest tips would be, think like a man would. And this is so obvious, but it's ridiculous. If you know Rosie, and you know that Rosie knows the MP you've applied for, do not feel any shame or guilt in texting Rosie and saying, Rosie, I'm applying for this MP and my background's I'm not that experienced, but can you put a good word in and say that you know me, that sort of thing. Because that goes a long way. And I'll tell you something, a guy who's done one round of deliveries for Rosie would definitely ask her that. So don't be shy to ask her things like that. I do feel for you as well, because before I got into politics, my background was I'd worked in Pounds of Fish Market and I'd had a job at Pizza Express. That's all I had. But like the people on the panel said before, that actually really gives you amazing people skills and gives you amazing, what you'd call professionally stakeholder management skills, are so improved by those experiences. Dealing with difficult people translates so brilliantly actually over to working in politics. So don't play your experience down that you already have, because working in the public, in service industries like that, where you are public facing, is actually a massive asset. My other tips would just be, it's really hard with coronavirus, but volunteer wherever you can, and just bank it and just say it. Don't be afraid to say it. Like, if you delivered 1 bag of leaflets on the 2019 general election, please put in that you campaigned in the general election because you did as much as you could. Things like that, and really ham it up. And also go through the application and the points that they're looking for, and make sure that you cover those in your cover letter with examples of where you've demonstrated that. I feel like I have a million tips. So if you're on Twitter, feel free to DM me and we can have a chat about it, because I'm more than happy to help look over cover letters or things like that. And you know, also try and get, if you can get any sort of work experience in Westminster, or if you want help in finding any, again, just contact me, because I'm more than happy to have a chat with you, because it is really, and you just need that one person who sort of will give you the foot in the door that really starts your political career. And I know that me and a lot of people on this panel and a lot of people in this chat have had that person. So please do just reach out to us, and we're more than happy to help with things like that.
Amelia, just going back on that, didn't you and Tara set up this thing to help people with their CVs? Is that still going on?
Yeah, we did. So this is there's Women in Westminster, and what we do as well is yeah, we check over CVs, we check over covering letters, and we offer tips and those sorts of things. If you Google Women in Westminster, our website will come in and you can submit your CV, or just DM me on Twitter personally, and I'll make sure it's done, because we did get hundreds upon hundreds, which we're still working through. But you know, it's cross-party, so do please feel free to, as an LWN member, come to me directly.
Okay, hope that's useful for you, Bella and Ellie as well. That's good. So I'm now going to open up, as I mentioned earlier, to Kathleen Clark, Rosa Bolger, and Adelina, and I think there's some more people, but I'll do that in the next round. So if we can just kind of keep it brief, because I think there's quite a few people that want to ask some questions as well. But this is really good tips. So Kathleen.
Hi, thanks for having me, and thank you to everyone who's spoken previously on this call. It's great to see that there's such a fantastic network. This question is from me, and also top comrade as well, Rosie McKenna, who's also on this call, and we're big fans of all the women here. So that's good to see. Our kind of question is around kind of harassment, especially on social media. We found that in the past couple of weeks, a lot of young Labour members who have been running for petitions have had a really hard time, and the social media abuse has been quite difficult. And we were wondering if there was any kind of, I know that LWN has called for an independent complaints process, but I was wondering if there was any updates on that.
Yeah, I can answer that question, and I think Angela might be able to cover it from her perspective, if that's all right. And then Rosa.
Hi there. Yeah, question about women's representation, particularly in local government. I think it's wonderful that the party has recently called for key workers to stand for election next May in our local government elections. But I want to know what more we can do to get women standing. The LWN have led some great campaigns like baby leave. But for example, myself, I was the first woman leader ever of Witney Town Council. I did it for a year entirely voluntarily, because there is no allowance at town and parish level. So if we're going to ask people who are generally lower paid, generally have more barriers from standing and becoming local representatives, particularly when it's not paid the amount of work it should be, what more can we do? How can we support these women?
That's great. And the final person that's got a question. Adelina? Is she there? I think I'll just ask her a question. She says that she was talking about a young member, someone that works in the medical education arena, which is very pale, male and stale. I can completely relate to that. She's asked how politicians can work more closely with females within the medical sphere so that we can tackle the issues that lead to health inequalities, especially women's health and child health. I think this is something that you can lean on, Nadia, but I'll draw in the rest of the panel as well. I'm just going to quickly answer Kathleen Clark's question, specifically on the independent complaints process. With Labour Women's Network, this is something that we are particularly passionate about, particularly as the fact that we are training loads of women to stand for public office. We do recognise there are barriers that women do face. With the last 3 party leaders and general secretary, we have consistently raised this issue for it to be addressed. Furthermore, we passed the motion at Women's Conference. And so just wanted to reassure everyone that we are still continuing to lobby for a better outcome in terms of the fact that we really want a genuine independent system which is going to work properly for women. And in our national NEC meetings, National Executive Committee of Qualities meetings, we consistently raise this issue. And so I want to make sure that from first contact to final outcome, that things are done appropriately, because there has been leaks, because to delays, and we're concerned about the fact that over the years there hasn't been as many suspensions and expulsions. But I think the party has, got it wrong in the past, but we're working positively to try and address this. But I think I'm going to pass it on to Angela, who will be able to answer that and other questions that people raised.
Yeah, thanks. And Labour Women's Network have been instrumental actually in calling the Labour movement out. And I think it's been really important. You've seen even this week the GMB report from, allegations into, well, it was called institutionally sexist, I think was the result of the report this week. And the Labour Party, let me tell you, are not sitting pretty on this issue either, from what I've seen through my dealings with the Labour Women's Network and other groups, including the Parliamentary Labour Women's group as well, is that we've got a long way to go. And both me and Kira are very, very committed to having an independent process. Some of that's been, we've been trying to progress alongside also the stuff to do with anti-Semitism, all forms of bullying and racism. We want a process that people have confidence in, because at the moment people don't have confidence in our process, and that's really damaging for us. So we need to do that. So me and Kira committed to that. Hopefully at the next NEC more information will go. The NEC officers recently agreed variations in our current, we changed the sexual harassment policy, and that is independent panels that do that. But because of COVID, those panels were not able to meet, we're not able to get the confidential data, and we're able to do the work to hear those cases, and that's now progressing, because I know that's been quite frustrating, especially for people who make the allegation and then they're waiting a very long time to hear about it, and that's no justice for people. That makes them feel like, their case isn't seen as serious. So we are pushing all of those things to make sure that the process is better for people. And we recognise that. And, the Me Too movement and what's been going on recently, I think is really welcome, because for a long time, a lot of us have just put up with that as part of the banter or part of the culture. And I've been guilty of that. I've been in the movement 20 years. I've put up with things that I probably shouldn't have put up with. And many of you on this call probably could recognise that, whether it's something minor or something really major. And actually speaking about it and giving people voices and making sure there's a process that makes people feel confident they can come forward is important. There was also a case for CPS, I think it was this week I saw on the news, where a case of a woman who had been videoed and the CPS didn't take it forward. She'd had, exploitative pictures of her taken, and she wasn't taken seriously, and she's pushed forward. So I think there's a responsibility on us to just keep pushing forward and recognising there's so much more we need to do in the movement. And then in terms of the barriers as well, that is a barrier. The way in which our institution is a barrier at the moment, Rosa. And again, it's like the women can have the jobs that are not paid. You can have the title that's not paid, or you can be in the room, but the men are going to be the ones that do the real work. And it's, you know, and that has to stop. We've got to find ways of, I called it in my manifesto, movement generosity. So instead of it being the favoured son that gets the support from the union or gets support from the person that's already in the job, actually we start movement generosity where we bank all of that and we use it through like Women's Labour Network and things like that, where we try and amplify to diversify our movement. And that's what I've been doing with these, we've been doing Zoom calls over summer just to try and diversify. And that's why I had the Key Workers campaign over the summer, is to just try and diversify our candidates. And I'm trying to help people who don't normally get that leg up. So I mentor on Labour Women's Network as well. So if you go on their programme, plug it again. If you go on their programme, candidates programme, I mentor people to do that as well. Because I think it's important to put your money where your mouth is, i.e. us women amplifying, supporting each other to give them experience and to give them help, because the system is rigged against you. Not that you need extra help, but the system's rigged against us. So we've got to start pushing to change the system. But in the meantime, help each other, recognising those challenges that we face.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else on the panel want to, Nadia, did you want to talk about the key workers? And then Amelia and Kate, shall bring you in as well.
Yeah, I'll pick up on key workers. Angela articulated the rest so well that there's nothing else to say there. So I'm part of the Shadow Health team, and I know that health inequality is a big priority for John Ashworth. It's something that he's very personally interested in and has been prioritising, well, since COVID, but also before that. It's something that, having been a low-paid key worker, well, before we were called key workers, but having been a care worker myself, and as someone who still has friends who are care workers and other key workers, this is particularly important to me. And I've been working with a group of other care workers with the IWGB, that's the Independent Workers of Great Britain Union, to speak about what the problems are in social care. And of course, it's not just social care, it's healthcare as well. But I think it's certainly amplified in social care. And actually, I think that this could be a really important campaign for the Labour Women's Network to work on, translating these very real problems of low pay, insecure work, workplace bullying, and then the problems of safety that COVID brings into actual policy demands.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was votes, but it's not yet. But I'm done.
Yeah. Thanks for that. That's really, really helpful. I also just wanted to highlight that with LWN, we mainly focus just on training, so we don't really look at policy within the party, because we don't have the capacity to do that. But I think that's a really important thing that's been raised. We literally don't really have much time now, but I just wanted to bring Amelia and Kate just to kind of answer some questions that are just in the chat, really. Someone from Sophia, who's just basically said she has joined the Labour Party quite recently, welcome. And she's worked for someone campaigning to be the first female Metro mayor, but noticed that as women standing, it's so easy to get boxed into certain issues, as Angela mentioned earlier, such as childcare, etc. How do we get away from this sort of sexism that exists in society and politics? So if Amelia and Kate, if you can look at that one. And then also Catherine Harlow's mentioned about advice to get into community projects. She wants to help more people locally in her area and is looking for tips on that. And Marina Masters has given is really a good contribution, saying that people over the age of 50 are in a unique position to have plenty of workforce experience to bring to a new career, while being able to obtain knowledge they need to take on something new. I think that was more of a statement, so I'm going to pass it on to you, Kate and Amelia, if that's okay.
Do you want me to go, Kate?
Yeah.
I found the thing about being boxed in on certain issues really interesting, because I read Harriet Harman's book over the summer, and she mentioned that one of the speeches she did in the House of Commons, she mentioned childcare, and all the men heckled her, and they were like, what are you talking about childcare for in the House of Commons? We're here to talk about the economy, and we're here to talk about, you know, trade, and we're here to talk about foreign relations. And they basically completely could not believe that she had the audacity to talk about something that wasn't politics in the House of Commons. So sometimes it is good that we're having these conversations, and you know, that shift almost for Harriet was really interesting, that one of her first speeches she was heckled for mentioning childcare, when you look at the 2015 general election, there was almost an arms race in talking about childcare and everybody offering different free hours. So I completely understand that, and I think one of the best ways to get women out of those boxes is actually to do what we're doing now in the PLP and have women in the non-traditional women's roles. So actually having a woman as Shadow Chancellor, having a woman as Shadow Foreign Secretary, I think that's really helpful in just sort of breaking down those barriers in terms of like, no, when you think of the Labour Party's policy on something to do with the economy, you think what Annalise Dodds said, those sorts of things, and having women in those roles and showing that we're really good at them actually is one of the most helpful things when it comes to unboxing women out of those roles, because there's some feminine roles where you naturally put women in, and I think Kia has actually done a good job of making sure that, you know, you've got quite a good split of those sorts of roles.
Okay, thank you. Kate?
I think Amelia answered that question really well, so I'm not going to supplement that one. And quickly as well, just to touch on an answer from Rosa's question about women in local government and sort of financial support and all the barriers that women face standing for office. Trade unions do have a sort of a political fund, and the community does it, and I'm sure other trade unions do it, where members can actually apply for financial support, standing for all different levels of office. Even though it might be only you know, a small amount, it still helps a lot of. We found a lot of women stand for election and get involved when they might not have been able to. Acknowledging there's loads of other barriers that women face, but just a heads up for those who might not be aware that that is available in trade unions. So contact your trade union if it's something you're interested in. To pick up on the question from Catherine about community projects and getting more young women involved in the area, one thing I've noticed, you know, throughout lockdown and a lot more CLPs having virtual meetings, is that a lot more women and young women have been able to attend and have been more interested to attend, because there's not the sort of usual barriers that all of us face, you know, in politics, from time and finances to location, but actually have been more able to get involved and find out what's going on and actually, you know, contribute and shape it too. So I'd really, you know, recommend, if you haven't already, and you've mentioned you've got a great CLP with already some really inspirational women, you know, bringing them together on a Zoom call if you haven't already, and you know, having those chats, developing the relationships, finding out what exactly would interest them to get more involved, and you know, enabling them to shape it in your area, I think is really key to making sure that they, you know, not only get involved but feel like they can really create meaningful change themselves. And I also want to pick up on a question from Anna about her experience as a steward in her union, and the experiences of sort of feeling like your voice isn't heard, and you know, not that comfortable in those spaces in terms of you attend. And I'd having a quiet word or having a meeting with your branch secretary, if you haven't already, and explaining how you feel, explaining the situation, and making sure that the branch secretary is aware of it. You don't actually feel like, you know, you can contribute on those meetings in your workplace, but you do want to get involved. Because I think a lot of the time, you know, especially in the union movement, a lot of men do like to talk, and they do like to tell you perhaps what they know best, and might forget to actually listen to a lot of members, especially women, and make sure that they are putting hands up and able to contribute and share your experiences too. So speak to your branch secretary, or speak to your regional secretary too, if you can get in touch with them and, you know, have that conversation. But also if you can get another woman in your workplace to come along to join the union, to support you, and you can both back each other up when you're in those meetings, I think that can be really powerful too.
Okay. I just want to say thank you to the panel speakers for their time, as I know you're all quite busy and you're all impressive women as well. So thank you for taking the time to speak to everyone. I also want to thank the audience as well for coming as well. I really want to thank Amelia and Kate, actually, who were the ones that came forward with this suggestion. And I'm sure, like me, everyone got a lot out of it. I also want to thank Claire and Jane, who have been helping behind the scenes to make sure that this event goes really smoothly. And I'm sure you agree that it did. And Rosie, who's been helping making sure that with the logistics as well, and the rest of LWM. I just wanted to say that I'm sure that a lot of you are feeling quite inspired. And if you're not, please do consider becoming a member of the Labour Women's Network. It is a sisterly organisation. And like we said, we are all shades of red, so it doesn't matter where you stand. I mean, ultimately, we just need to come together and make sure that we have a Labour government, because things are really tough at the moment. One of the things I wanted to ask you is also please follow us on social media, and also come to our training courses as well. We're actually a voluntary-led organisation, so we don't get paid to do this. We do it because we want to see more women in the movement. And so if you can donate money, we would really need it, because, you know, it helps us to deliver training courses, particularly courses like the Joe Cox training program and a number of our other LWN training programs. We haven't been able to deliver it at the moment because of COVID, and we're hoping to resume it as soon as we can really possibly do that. Also, look at passing motions for your CLPs. Go on our website and look at our motions, because we've got a number of motions. And most importantly, be sisterly and support your fellow women members. This is something that has been echoed throughout this whole conversation this evening. We just need to make sure that politics is a lot kinder and a lot toxic, and it is at the moment. It is really toxic, and it's putting women off, and we can help facilitate that change by making those steps. I think also one thing that's really important is try and be an agent of change locally. Call out sexism when you can see it. There's nothing worse than silence, particularly when it comes to racism as well, when sexism and politics. We just need as many allies to support each other. So I really like the question I think Bella put in about being kind of sisterly, and she's running for position. And finally, I want to say to anyone that is running for something at the moment, best of luck. And you know, I hope it goes well, and I hope you learn a lot from it. So that's about it, and I hope you guys have found it useful. This has been recorded, so you should be able to catch it up later. So thank you, everybody.